Let me tell you about a specific kind of emotional experience that some people find confusing. It's not real grief. It's not personal loss. It's not even about your own life. It's tears for fictional characters. Genuine sorrow for people who don't exist. Real emotion triggered by stories aren't true. If you cry during sad movies, you know this experience intimately. You know what it's like when the lights come up and your face is wet, when you're wiping your eyes while everyone else seems fine, when you're genuinely moved by something that was scripted, performed, designed to manipulate your emotions, and it worked. You know what it's like when people notice, when they tease you for crying over a movie, when they call you sensitive or soft, when they seem puzzled that fiction could affect you so deeply. You know the slight embarrassment mixed with the catharsis, the feeling of being emotionally wrung out by a story, the way a good sad movie can leave you feeling both devastated and somehow better. And you might have wondered why you're like this, why fiction affects you when it doesn't affect others the same way, why your emotional response to pretend situations feels so real. Here's what I want you to understand. Crying at sad movies isn't weakness. It's not gullibility. It's not being unable to separate fiction from reality. It's a sign of deep emotional engagement, of empathy so strong it crosses the boundary between real and imagined, of a mind that experiences stories as genuine emotional events. And if you've ever been embarrassed by tears during a movie, if you've ever felt foolish for being moved by fiction, if you've ever wondered why you cry when the characters aren't even real, stay here, because what you're about to understand isn't just about movie tears, it's about what those tears reveal, about the gift of emotional openness, and why your ability to cry for fictional people says something profound about your capacity to feel for real ones. Here's what's actually happening in your brain when you cry during a sad movie. Your mind isn't distinguishing between real and fictional emotion, at least not emotionally. Cognitively, you know the movie isn't real, you know the actors are performing, you know the story was written, you're not confused about the nature of fiction, but emotionally, your brain responds as if the events are happening, because the part of your brain that processes emotion doesn't care whether the stimulus is real or imagined. It just responds to emotional content. When you watch a character lose someone they love, your brain activates the same regions that would activate if you were experiencing loss. Your mirror neurons fire. Your empathy centers engage. Your emotional processing areas respond to the sadness as if it's yours. This is why your body produces real tears. Because to your emotional brain, the sadness is real. The grief is real. The emotion is genuine even if the source is fictional. Neuroscientists call this narrative transportation. It's the phenomenon of becoming so absorbed in a story that you temporarily lose awareness of the real world and enter the world of the narrative. And people who cry during sad movies are exceptionally good at this. They don't just watch stories, they enter them, experience them, feel them as if they're living inside the narrative. This isn't a flaw, it's a feature, a capacity for deep imaginative engagement that not everyone possesses to the same degree. Here's what people who cry at sad movies tend to have in common: high empathy, the ability to feel what others feel, even when those others are fictional. Empathy is a spectrum. Some people understand emotions intellectually without feeling them viscerally. They can recognize that someone is sad without experiencing sadness themselves. But people with high empathy don't just recognize emotion, they absorb it, feel it in their own bodies, experience it as if it's their own. And this capacity doesn't turn off for fiction. If anything, fiction might activate it more strongly because there's safety in it. You can feel deeply without real-world consequences. You can experience grief without actual loss. You can access emotion in its pure form without the complications of reality. Research shows that people who cry at sad movies also tend to score higher on measures of emotional intelligence. They're better at reading other people's emotions, better at understanding complex emotional situations, better at navigating relationships because they can genuinely feel what others feel. The tears during movies aren't separate from this. They're evidence of it. Proof that your empathy is so strong it extends even to people who don't exist. And in a world that often struggles with empathy, with truly feeling for others, this is remarkable. Not embarrassing. Remarkable. Here's why some people cry at movies while others don't. It's partly about how much you allow yourself to feel, how willing you are to be vulnerable, even in a dark theatre. Some people maintain emotional distance from media. They watch stories from the outside. They stay aware that it's fiction. They don't let themselves get pulled in completely. This isn't better or worse. It's just different. It's a form of self-protection, because letting yourself feel deeply, even for fiction, requires vulnerability, requires opening yourself to emotion without knowing where it will take you. People who cry at sad movies have relaxed that protection. They've allowed themselves to be moved, to be affected, to let stories reach the parts of them that feel. And this same openness affects how they move through the world. They're affected by real situations too, by the sadness of others, by stories on the news, by the suffering they encounter in daily life. They haven't hardened themselves, haven't built walls between their hearts and the world. And movies are just one place where that openness shows. Here's what happens during a sad movie for someone who cries easily. They become absorbed. The theatre disappears. The awareness that they're watching actors reciting lines fades. The story becomes real. They're not thinking about the cinematography or the writing or the performances. They're just experiencing the narrative as if it's happening. When the character loses someone, they feel loss. When the character grieves, they grieve. When the character experiences heartbreak, their own heart breaks. And the tears come naturally, not because they've decided to cry, but because their body is responding to emotion, their brain is experiencing as real. There's no performance in it, no decision, just automatic response to genuine feeling. And afterward, there's often a sense of catharsis, of having released something, even though the grief wasn't theirs, even though nothing in their real life changed, because emotion needs release regardless of its source. And crying, even for fictional reasons, provides that release, allows feelings to move through you instead of staying stuck. Here's the social aspect of crying at movies. It reveals you, shows your emotional nature to whoever you're with, makes you visible in ways that might feel uncomfortable. Some people are self-conscious about this. They try to hide their tears, wipe them away quickly, pretend they have something in their eye, because they don't want others to see them cry over fiction. They worry it makes them seem weak, too sensitive, unable to maintain composure, like they can't handle their emotions properly. But others have decided not to hide it. They cry openly, let the tears fall, accept that this is part of how they experience stories. And there's freedom in that, in not pretending to be unmoved when you're genuinely affected, in letting yourself be seen in your emotional responsiveness. Because the people who judge you for crying at movies are often people who've disconnected from their own emotions, who've learned to suppress feeling, who mistake emotional control for emotional health. But you haven't made that mistake. You've stayed connected to your capacity to feel, and that's worth more than appearing composed. Here's what's interesting about which movies make people cry. It's not always the obviously sad ones. Sometimes the tears come during moments of beauty, of connection, of characters finally getting what they've longed for. Happy tears are just as common as sad ones for people who cry at movies, because the tears aren't really about sadness. They're about being moved, about emotion reaching a certain intensity regardless of its type. A character reuniting with someone they love, a moment of sacrifice or bravery, a scene of pure kindness or understanding. These can trigger tears just as much as death or loss. Because what you're crying about isn't just the plot, it's the humanity, the recognition of something true about being alive, The way a story can capture feeling so precisely that it bypasses your defenses and goes straight to your heart. You're crying because you've been moved. And being moved is a form of being alive, of being open, of being human in the fullest sense. Here's what people who cry at sad movies often do with this tendency. They seek it out. They choose movies that will make them cry, because they have learnt that the emotional experience is valuable. They're not masochists. They're not trying to make themselves sad. They're creating space for emotional release that their daily lives might not provide, because modern life often requires emotional containment. You can't cry at work, can't break down during errands, can't let yourself feel fully while managing responsibilities. But in a dark theatre, watching a sad movie, you can. You have permission, you have privacy, you have 2 hours where emotional release is acceptable, even expected. So the tears aren't just about the movie, they're about everything. All the feelings you've been carrying, all the grief or tenderness or longing that daily life doesn't make space for. The movie just gives you permission to feel, and once you have permission, everything comes up. Not just the fictional grief, but the real grief too. Not just the character's loss, but your own losses. The movie becomes a container, a safe place to feel things that are otherwise too risky or too vulnerable or too overwhelming. Here's the gift that people who cry at sad movies possess: emotional accessibility, the ability to access feeling quickly and fully. Many people struggle with this. They're disconnected from their emotions, can't access them easily, need extreme circumstances to feel anything deeply. But if you cry at sad movies, your emotions are right there, close to the surface, available, responsive. This makes life richer because you feel the full range, not just the convenient emotions, but all of them. The joy is more joyful, the beauty is more beautiful, and yes, the sadness is sadder. But that's the price of feeling fully. You're not numbed, not disconnected, not going through life at half intensity to protect yourself from the difficult emotions. You're experiencing everything, feeling it all, living at full volume, and the tears at sad movies are just evidence of that. Proof that you're open, that you haven't closed yourself off, that you've maintained your capacity to be moved. Here's what I want you to know if you cry during sad movies. Those tears are nothing to be ashamed of, nothing to hide or apologize for. They're evidence of empathy, of openness, of being emotionally alive in ways that matter. They mean you haven't hardened yourself against feeling, haven't built walls so high that nothing can reach you, haven't decided that appearing composed is more important than being genuine. They mean you can still be moved, still be affected, still feel deeply for others, even when those others are fictional. And that capacity, that willingness to feel, it extends beyond movies. It shows up in your real relationships, in how you care for others, in how you respond to suffering and joy. The tears in the theatre are just the visible part. The real gift is the heart that produces them, the empathy that makes you cry for people who aren't real, because your capacity for feeling doesn't require reality to function. So the next time you're watching a movie and the tears start to come, don't fight them, don't feel embarrassed, don't wish you were different. Let them fall, let yourself be moved, let yourself experience the full emotional power of the story, because those tears mean you're alive, really alive, not just existing but feeling, not just observing but experiencing, not just watching but being affected. And in a world that increasingly numbs itself, that builds walls between hearts and experiences, your willingness to cry at sad movies is a form of courage. It's choosing to feel even when feeling hurts, choosing to stay open even when closing would be easier, choosing to be moved even when being unmoved would be more comfortable. And that is beautiful, not weak, beautiful. So cry at sad movies, cry at happy ones too. Cry whenever stories reach the place in you that feels, because that place is precious, and those tears are proof that it's still there.